Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Boogie Board Tiki Bar. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Jonathan Tice. He's the founder of Fit to Scale, joining us from Seattle, Washington today. Jonathan, how you doing? Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm doing great. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that you're from Seattle originally. You grew up there?
Yeah, I grew up in the Seattle area, but left for college in Boston and spent most of my adult time and career on the East Coast, and now I'm back.
And so, growing up as a kid in Seattle, I imagine 10-year-old Jonathan didn't yet know that he wanted to be a CRO, an advisor. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
I actually was thinking that I would be a judge of all things. Yeah, I just really like the just kind of I'm really fascinated by ideas and debate. Yeah.
Okay. And then you ultimately decide to travel across the country to go to Boston College at some point. What made you want to do that? Did you know what you wanted to study when you got there?
I was on the kind of lawyer track for a while. And so I actually did an undergrad in political science and even had an internship with Ted Kennedy while I was
Cool.
at Boston College. But yeah, I did some informational interviews with some lawyers in Boston, and they were a pretty unhappy bunch. And one of them was actually becoming a soccer coach. And so yeah, I changed directions and was actually joined a technology firm right out of school as part of kind of one of the early search 1.0, and that's kind of where I got my career.
What did you learn as an intern in Ted Kennedy's office? I would imagine that's a fast paced environment and you got some probably big duties that are quite visible there.
Yeah, I would say that I really learned a lot about how to communicate with folks. So the Ted Kennedy's office really tried to serve like the everyone, not just kind of the folks that were aligned with his politics. And so being able to talk to different types of stakeholders and to be able to really, communicate effectively with folks that had different kind of opinions than the office did was a skill I definitely picked up there.
Oh, that's awesome. And I imagine that's then relevant when you graduate college. And then it looks like you took a job in product management for your first one out the door. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was actually on the kind of operations side for a while, and a mentor of mine when I was at Tech Target encouraged me to put a business plan together. So I actually launched a new product within kind of the walls of Tech Target, got budget approval and put a whole business plan together. And so that's kind of where I started with kind of entrepreneurship in general and in my career.
And what's the biggest learning from that experience? I mean, you're really young at that point. Your background is in some pre-law work, and I imagine going and saying, "Okay, I've got this idea for a technical product within this company, and let's get it going." Is a difficult sell, but you made it happen.
Yeah, that's actually how by launching that product and with really kind of bootstrapping that within Tech Target, I had to wear a lot of different hats. That's how I got into sales. That's how I got into every aspect of supporting and launching that product, from marketing to go to market to pricing, packaging, the whole kit and caboodle.
So I'm interested in your transition then into more formally joining kind of the revenue organization. Looks like you were then a direct seller and sales leadership. At what point does it click for you and you say, okay, this go to market stuff, this is for me?
So I really liked helping my customers and really being kind of an expert at what they needed and then matching that to what kind of their own business goals. So I think that it's a little bit of a misnomer to talk about salespeople wanting to be salespeople. Instead, I think it's really folks who think that they have a valuable perspective, want to talk to other people and figure out if it's a match. And when you do that, it doesn't become, your job isn't salesy. Instead, you're just sharing your perspective and you're really helping them if there's a fit. And that kind of gets rid of I think a lot of the negative perceptions that people have when maybe they've been sold or been convinced to buy or been to buy something that they may not need or want.
Has that insight influenced the way that you have looked for salespeople that have been part of your teams or organizations that you've developed?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I always look for folks that have an intellectual curiosity. So they're really trying to understand the people that they're talking to, and also folks that, really care about, how they're operating, care about their own personal brand, and really are, not, seeking to help people and really consult with them, as opposed to convince them to do something that they wouldn't otherwise want to do or that isn't in their best interest.
That makes sense. And obviously, you're a successful salesperson. You were kind of moving up the ladder. You enter vice president roles really early in your life. I'm curious about that transition for you of going from a direct seller, kind of bootstrapping a product within a company, and then leading large revenue organizations. What was the hardest part about that for you?
I think overall, one thing that I realized really early on was that I wanted to help other people, but not bootstrap them. So I didn't need to be I didn't need to play hero ball. I didn't need to be the person who was the focal point of a particular sale. And so when I started to work with others and kind of build out my team, I was always looking for ways to be supportive and also to maximize my time, so that kind of train someone to fish as opposed to catching the fish for themselves. And also, I just got a lot more enjoyment out of it. If I could help someone else be better at their job, that to me has a much more lasting impact than me coming in and closing that one sale.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious about this. You've got really interesting transition at the beginning of your career, because you have this entrepreneurial bend and the ability to like focus on a technical product. And then you got into sales. I think a lot of times folks get into sales right away and they kind of are scared of learning the depths of a product, or scared of perceiving themselves as technical. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if you as you grew into larger sales roles, you did anything to continue developing that muscle specifically, as you're a senior vice president of sales and marketing. How do you stay close to the product and the value proposition so that what you're sending out there is making sense?
Sure. One of the things that I've seen over and over again is the kind of connection point between sales, marketing, and product is just a really, really important one. And when companies aren't doing really well, it's usually when there's a breakdown between kind of, there's one of those three legs of the stool is missing or a little shorter than another one. And it creates, creates kind of an overall issue. So whenever I've led a sales team or led a marketing team, making sure that there's uniformity around how we view the pain of the customer, how we're addressing that, and how we're doing that, on a go forward basis and in the future is really important. So partly because I started in product leadership and then went into sales, which is definitely, as you alluded to, really kind of a strange and unusual transition, that gave me a lot more perspective on product market fit, on ensuring that marketing and sales and product leadership and engineering teams all kind of knew about the pain of the customer, knew how we were trying to solve it, and kind of felt that organizationally. And in general, I think the more that there's more uniformity around that, the better a company can operate. And there's really a lot less sunlight between different groups and different points of view within an organization.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm sure your customers love that you had that ability to go deep, and the understanding of how important it is. I'm curious about the marketing side, and what was something maybe you didn't expect when you picked up the marketing side of the house when you're first getting into it, and you say, okay, I didn't really realize that this is what marketing did.
Yeah, I think overall, trying to understand the perspective of other functional leads is an ongoing habit and something that I need to keep up, and any good leader should really keep up. And so, having been in charge of marketing in different roles, and then also worked with really strong marketing leaders over my career, just trying to see things from a different lens is really important to me. I have always really enjoyed having an impact and actually seeing kind of the fruits of my labor. And I work best with marketers who do the same thing. So who may not care really about hitting their MQL total, but really care about whether or not those leads turn into revenue. And I think that's kind of borne out in general. The marketing leaders who are the strongest are those who like to be associated with revenue and they don't have that sunlight between how success is viewed. There's not, success isn't in individual silos. It's as a company, and successes are kind of celebrated together.
That makes a lot of sense. And you go on to become a chief customer officer, a chief revenue officer multiple times. You go through, I think, it's 3 exits. And so I'm curious of how you're able to stay kind of technically adept in all of those areas while you're joining the executive role. As you're doing that, some of the technical landscape is changing. AI is kind of entering the scene. There's constantly new software available to you. The last few years, there's obviously the software crunch that has changed the business model. How are you able to stay fit on the technical side of the products you're using and the products you're selling?
So overall, I think that's really something you have to put a lot of focus on. I've seen a lot of other sales leaders or go-to-market leaders that try to use the same playbook, over and over and over again. And that just doesn't work. What worked, for instance, for lead gen and new business development 5 years ago is not the same things that work right now. So, by, having a peer group where I have a lot of other, heads of sales, heads of marketing that I'm talking to, constantly educating myself around what's going on, and just being really excited by what's new and to try out new things. That's ultimately served me really well. And I do think that really differentiates, how I tend to view things versus how some others do overall. If ever someone is trying to rinse and repeat the same playbook from one company to the next, I would say that their failure rate is going to be really high.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Willingness to learn, prioritizing that, and then willingness to adapt to apply those learnings. So I mentioned the 3 exits, and you're now an advisor to companies, and you've been on boards of companies. I would imagine that when you're in that role, part of what you're supposed to do is kind of talk to the younger version of yourself at those companies. What do you say kind of about those exits or things that you've learned that you look for when you're advising companies now?
So in terms of helping folks that are a little bit earlier or haven't kind of had as many hard lessons overall, I really encourage folks to have that adaptiveness and learning. I think it's probably said over and over by lots of other folks, but in general, that constant attention to staying current is really important. Having an intellectual curiosity around data, and always wanting to iterate and test different types of things, I think is what really, really differentiates folks in general and what helps with performance. The other thing too that I'd really advise is that proximity to other leaders as someone climbs up the ranks, having that one company view, that one team view versus having success in silos. I think that is something that really is how people can help find the right company, find the right team to work with, and where they can really excel and have similar kind of returns and success.
I love that. I want to fast forward a little bit to today then. It looks like you have a couple balls in the air, and I want to ask about all of them. So can you tell me about Prompt Engineering Inc.? What does the company do? What's your involvement there?
Sure. So I'm a fractional chief business officer there, really helping them kind of understand the early product market fit, get initial traction, help with fundraising, and really just kind of building momentum for the business overall. And then they're really really great team overall, and are doing some interesting things in terms of kind of reinventing how e-commerce retailers can improve the customer experience. In general, that problem state is one that a lot of folks have seen as a consumer, where they go to an individual website and get results that just don't match with what they were looking for. And so I think that's it's a really obvious problem state, a really savvy team, and so I'm excited about it.
Well, I'll have a lead for you after this, because yesterday I was on a clothing website and I couldn't get it to show me men's clothes. So I'll shoot that over to the team. Fit to Scale. You're the founder. Can you tell us the story of how it came to be?
Yeah. So overall, I had been invited to participate in as a board member and a board advisor through a number of different companies, even as I was doing full-time work with different, as a CRO or CCO. And I really, really enjoyed that. I was able to get a really high impact for those companies pretty quickly and pretty easily. And so that excites me a lot in general. And I love and get really fascinated by new ideas, new companies, and really just like being helpful. And so by virtue of really enjoying that and opportunistically, as people were asking me about new opportunities, I really wanted that to become my full-time gig. So I now help folks from as much as kind of half-time as like a head of go-to-market, head of sales and marketing, to kind of a lighter help where it's more board advisory or temporary work. And I'm working with, I really started doing that, full-throatedly in September of last year. And I'm working with 5 companies currently in some capacity in terms of helping them with their sales and marketing overall. Some stealth companies that I haven't put out there yet. But no, it's been really exciting. It's a really, really good way for me to lend my expertise and help improve someone's efforts and get to that next milestone, be that getting their next funding raise or getting those next cohort of customers. And so yeah, that's been really exciting and something that I really love.
Does the name have anything to do with you being a marathoner?
No, it doesn't. No, that Fit to Scale is really about a company that's ready based on the unit economics of the business to put more money into sales and marketing. What often happens is that companies, they won't necessarily establish as tight of a problem or product market fit as they should, and then they'll start hiring salespeople, or they'll start spending on marketing before they're really ready. So this is really about capital efficiency and helping people to really have a repeatable sales motion, marketing motion, and revenue engine so that they can efficiently scale and grow responsibly.
That makes a lot of sense. And obviously that's very relevant today. I'm trying to think of how to ask this next question then about that, because I would imagine that message is basically more relevant today than it was a couple of years ago. And so I kind of wanted to ask about how you landed on it.
Yeah, well, so there's a lot of talk in general of being scalable, scaling up, but a lot of companies focus on that before they're ready. And in general, there's a lot of inflection points with regards to startups in general. And I think people really miss that overall. Head of sales, or that you have when you're a $5 million company or a $1 million company or a $20 million or a $50 million company, is really doing different types of things for the organization and has a very different job. And so by either advising or being hands-on, but not full-time, I'm able to give folks really the advantages of having a more senior salesperson that might be the best fit for their organizational stage and really help them accelerate through to that next milestone. And it's just a lot better of a model for businesses in general. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for someone who's a seed stage or a Series A to hire a full-time CRO. But can I leapfrog them by giving them more expertise than they'd be able to hire otherwise? Absolutely. And that kind of leapfrogging is something that really excites me.
Do you hear any, I'm curious now if this is like boomeranged to the point where folks are almost unwilling to think about scale because there's such a threat of profitable growth being put out into the marketplace now. Do you see any folks that are afraid to throw gasoline on the fire when the timing is right to do that? Or is that not something that's out there today and we're still kind of correcting the other side of that mistake?
I think that we're still shaking off the 2021, 2022 growth at all costs mentality. I think folks know that they need to be deliberate with how they spend. I think that's certainly true. I also think there's a tendency in particular with really technical founders and technical teams to build product too early or to hand off responsibilities for sales too early, and that can result in overspending and also potentially not having the right kind of basis for scaling before they're ready. So I do think we're still shaking it off. I think people are more cautious with how they spend money. But in general, I do think it's a lesson that's still being learned.
How long have you been back in Seattle now after your Boston days?
I've been back in Seattle a year in September. Yeah, it's been great. We're right in the heart of Seattle, but we're still surrounded by evergreen forests, and yeah, I've loved it so far.
Good for you. Well, I'm sure there's many that were around you growing up that are glad to have you back.
Yeah, no, it's been great. In particular, my family's very, very happy to not have to travel across the entire country to visit with my kids and visit with me.
Yeah, I've got the opposite. I've got the cross country, but north-south going right now because my parents are in Milwaukee and I've got my kids are down here in Texas. So I understand that could solve some problems for you. Do you have marathons lined up for this year? I saw you were posting about trying to kind of figure out what was next?
Yeah, so I am going to be actually meeting up with a former boss of mine out in Copenhagen in May,
Amazing.
and I'm going to try to line up at least another marathon after that. In general, I'm really excited about it. I try to use it as an excuse to go to places I haven't visited before, and kind of break my prior personal records. Although I can't say that they're ones I want to publish to the wider community right now.
Hey, I'm the same way. You know, just go out there, have some fun. It's a great way to see a city. When else can you have all the streets shut down for you to just have, even if you're walking, it's just a walkabout through probably the best areas of town. Well, Jonathan, I had kind of one last question. You know, I'm curious, you know, if you're going back and thinking about yourself in that early product role right out of college, and you wanted to be a judge, so you probably don't know about all the future success you're going to have in sales leadership and in revenue leadership, what you would kind of tell your earlier self now that you have the wisdom of an advisor, of a successful entrepreneur?
I don't know that I would. I really took up opportunities as I saw them. And, if I was to do it again, I think just being open to new opportunities is probably the thing that the advice I'd give. And then separately, just taking chances in general is something that I think really pays a lot of dividends. And it's hard to know that early on in general.
I think that's great advice. And Jonathan, thanks so much for the time. We again appreciate you talking with us. I wish you the best of luck in Copenhagen here in a few months, and we'll post links to all that you're involved with on LinkedIn, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks, Jonathan.